Perhaps, Chloe, there's a more creative solution to your arrears? Mr. Davenport's voice was a low hum, oily and suggestive. As his gaze slid over the threadbare robe I clutched around myself. 3 months the rent was past due. The eviction notice, a stark white ghost on my kitchen counter. His eyes weren't just seeing a desperate tenant in this decaying brownstone. They were weighing my worth, my pliability. The unspoken hung heavy between us, a suffocating promise of a way out that led only deeper into darkness. Welcome, dear listeners, to Hidden Love Stories, where we uncover the often unseen and unspoken narratives of the heart, exploring the complex tapestry of human desire, desperation, and the difficult choices that define us. Today, Chloe shares her deeply personal and harrowing true story, a journey into a world she never chose but was forced to navigate. Before we begin, we invite you to take a moment of reflection. What would you do if survival meant compromising your very soul? Please share your thoughts with empathy and understanding in the comments below. Your voice helps create a sanctuary for these hidden narratives. We sincerely appreciate your support, so please like this video, subscribe to Hidden Love Stories, and click that notification bell so you never miss an episode. May these stories bring you a deeper understanding of the human condition. The city was a symphony of indifferent noise outside my grimy window, but inside apartment 4B, the silence was a suffocating blanket, broken only by the frantic, terrified thumping of my own heart. The third knock on the door, sharper and more insistent this time, was the one I couldn't ignore. It was Mr. Davenport, my landlord. And I was 3 months behind on rent, a chasm of debt I had no conceivable way to bridge. I pulled my thin, frayed robe tighter around myself, a pathetic shield against the inevitable. My reflection in the cracked bathroom mirror moments before had shown a ghost. Pale, haunted eyes, cheekbones too prominent from skipped meals. This city, once a beacon of hope, had systematically stripped me bare. The part-time waitressing job had vanished with the restaurant's sudden closure, and my attempts to find new work had been met with a relentless series of slammed doors. Opening the door, I was met with Mr. Davenport's practiced smile, the one that never quite reached his cold, assessing eyes. He was a man in his late 50s, I guessed, always impeccably dressed in suits that seemed out of place in this dilapidated building, a stark reminder of the power imbalance between us. "Chloe, my dear," he began, his voice a smooth baritone that always set my teeth on edge. His gaze flickered down, taking in my worn robe, lingering a moment too long. "I'm afraid we need to discuss the outstanding unpleasantness." "I know, Mr. Davenport," I managed, my voice barely a whisper. The eviction notice he'd taped to my door a week prior felt like it was burning a hole in my pocket, even though I'd long since crumpled it up. "I'm trying, I really am." I need a little more time. I'm expecting a call back about a job any day now." It was a lie, a flimsy, desperate fabrication, and we both knew it. He stepped inside, his presence immediately making the cramped studio feel smaller, more claustrophobic. He brought with him the faint, cloying scent of expensive cologne and something else, an undercurrent of stale cigar smoke that clung to his clothes. He closed the door behind him, the soft click, an ominous sound that seemed to seal my fate. "Time, Chloe," he said, his eyes roaming the small, sparsely furnished room, taking in the threadbare rug, the single wilting plant on the windowsill. "Is a commodity. And unfortunately, my mortgage company isn't as understanding as I try to be." He paused, allowing his words to hang in the air, heavy and suffocating. Then his voice dropped, taking on a softer, more insidious tone. It truly pains me to see a lovely, vibrant young woman like yourself in such dire straits. So much beauty, so much potential, going to waste. A hot, shameful flush crept up my neck. I knew, with a sickening lurch in my stomach, where this conversation was veering. I'd seen that predatory glint in his eyes before, during brief encounters in the hallway. A look that had always made me hurry past, my skin crawling. "I will find the money, Mr. Davenport," I insisted, trying to inject a confidence I didn't feel into my voice. "I promise." He sighed, a theatrical display of paternal disappointment that made me want to scream. "Promises are lovely, Chloe, but they don't keep the lights on." He took another step closer, invading my already shrinking personal space. I instinctively backed away, my bare feet cold against the worn linoleum. He noticed my retreat, and a faint, almost imperceptible smirk touched the corner of his lips. "However," he continued, his voice now a silken purr, "perhaps there are alternatives. For a woman as resourceful and attractive as yourself, a more creative solution to your arrears." My heart began to hammer against my ribs, a frantic, trapped bird. There it was. The unspoken, now dragged into the stark, unforgiving light. I don't understand what you're implying, Mr. Davenport." My feigned innocence sounded pathetic even to my own ears. He chuckled, a low, guttural sound that seemed to vibrate in the very air around us. "Oh, I think you do, Chloe. You're an intelligent, perceptive woman. Let's not insult each other with games. Your significant debt, it could be managed, wiped clean, in fact. And perhaps even a little something extra, a stipend, to help you get back on your feet." His eyes held mine, their murky depths filled with an unholy combination of power and desire. There was no mistaking the implication now. It was as clear as the eviction notice. "No one ever needs to know, of course," he added, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "A simple, discreet understanding, mutually beneficial." The room felt hot, suffocating, the city noises fading into a distant, irrelevant hum. My mind raced, desperately trying to conjure an escape route, any alternative, any lifeline, but there were none. The thought of the streets, of the cold, indifferent shelters, of the gnawing hunger and the ever-present fear. It was a terrifying, yawning abyss. He watched me, his patience a tangible, oppressive thing, supremely confident in the crushing weight of my desperation. The silence stretched, thick and taut, filled only by the frantic, panicked thumping of my own heart. Slowly, feeling as though I were watching myself from a great astronomical distance, a detached observer of my own impending doom, I gave a single, almost invisible nod. My will had crumbled. My fight was over. His smile widened then, a flash of ugly, unconcealed triumph in his murky eyes. He reached out, his fingers, surprisingly cool and dry, brushing against the worn fabric of my robe, moving with agonizing slowness towards the tie at my waist. "I knew you were a sensible, pragmatic girl, Chloe," he purred. "Let's seal our new arrangement, shall we?" He led me, or rather gently but irresistibly propelled me, towards the small, dim bedroom, his hand a heavy, possessive weight on the small of my back. The air in there was stale, filled with the lingering scent of my own fear and sleepless nights. He didn't rush. Every movement he made was deliberate, almost languid, as if he were savoring each moment of his victory, each step of my surrender. He sat on the edge of my unmade bed, the ancient springs groaning a mournful protest under his weight, and patted the space beside him, an unspoken command. My legs felt like lead, weighted down by shame and a crushing sense of inevitability. But they moved, carrying me forward like a condemned prisoner to the gallows. I was a puppet, and he now held all the strings. The acts that followed are a horrifying, fragmented blur in my memory, a kaleidoscope of humiliation, of detached, robotic obedience. I focused on a water stain on the ceiling, shaped vaguely like a weeping face. I focused on the distant, mournful wail of a siren, a sound that seemed to echo the desolation in my own soul. I focused on anything but the stark, visceral reality of what was happening to my body, to my spirit. There was a profound coldness inside me, a spreading numbness that was almost a perverse kind of mercy, shielding me from the full impact of my degradation. He was methodical, unhurried, taking what he clearly believed was his due, his right as the man who held my precarious existence in the palm of his hand. He murmured instructions, words of crude encouragement, his breath hot and smelling faintly of coffee, and something else, something acrid. And in the midst of my profound shame, my desperate attempts at dissociation, a horrifying, sickening flicker occurred. My body, that ultimate, intimate traitor, responded with an involuntary tremor, a purely physical reaction to a certain touch, a certain pressure that had nothing whatsoever to do with desire, but which his knowing, guttural grunt of satisfaction clearly acknowledged. It was a small, devastating betrayal from within, a physiological response that made the shame burn even hotter, even deeper, sealing my self-loathing. When it was finally, mercifully over, he rose from the bed, adjusting his clothes with an air of casual, almost bored satisfaction, as if he'd just concluded a particularly satisfactory business transaction. "You did well, Chloe," he said, his voice once again that of a perfectly reasonable, almost benevolent landlord. "Very accommodating. Consider your debt managed for the time being." I lay there, curled tightly on my side, pulling the threadbare, stained blanket around my trembling body, feeling a bone-deep cold that had nothing to do with the room's temperature. Managed, not forgiven, not erased. The chilling implication was crystal clear. This was not a one-time transaction. This was the beginning of the new terms of my tenancy. A few days later, the other heavier shoe dropped. He found me as I was listlessly leaving the building, ostensibly for another soul-crushing, fruitless job search. "Chloe," he said, his voice smooth as ever, falling into step beside me on the cracked sidewalk. "I've been giving our arrangement some thought. It occurs to me that it's a bit one-sided, don't you think? You receive a significant benefit, a roof over your head, and my compensation is rather limited." I tensed, every nerve ending screaming in alarm. My heart began to pound with a familiar, sickening dread. What do you mean, Mr. Davenport? "You have certain undeniable talents, my dear. A natural aptitude, one might say." His eyes slid over me, that familiar, appraising glint returning. "And I happen to have several business associates, gentlemen of considerable means and discerning tastes, who greatly appreciate those particular talents. They are willing, I assure you, to be very, very generous for an evening of sophisticated companionship for a woman as charmingly accommodating as yourself." My stomach plunged, a sickening freefall into a new, even deeper level of hell. You want me to sleep with other men? For money?" The words felt alien, grotesque on my tongue. "It's an opportunity, Chloe, a lucrative one." His voice was calm, persuasive, the voice of a seasoned negotiator closing a deal. A way for you to not just scrape by, but to actually get ahead, to gain some real financial independence. Think of it. No more worrying about rent, about bills, about where your next meal is coming from. He painted a picture of a life free from the constant, gnawing anxiety that had become my shadow. One evening, perhaps two gentlemen. Very discreet, of course, and the payment, well, let's just say it would be substantial, enough to give you a genuine fresh start, a real chance. The thought was repulsive, a violation of every remaining shred of my dignity. But then, so was the thought of imminent eviction, of the cold, unforgiving streets, of the gnawing, relentless hunger, of the utter, abject hopelessness that had become my constant, suffocating companion. He saw the desperate conflict raging in my eyes, the battle between my revulsion and my primal instinct for survival. "It's merely an extension of our current understanding, Chloe," he added, his voice a silken trap. "You've already demonstrated your adaptability, your capacity to please." He smiled then, a cold, reptilian curve of his lips. "They're discerning men, Chloe. They will treat you well, like a queen, in fact, and you will be very, very well compensated for your time and your efforts." One evening, two men. The words echoed in the desolate chambers of my mind. The pragmatic, desperate part of me, the part that would do anything to escape the immediate terror of homelessness, was already calculating, weighing options that shouldn't even be on the table for consideration. Could I do it? Could I debase myself further, sell another larger piece of my soul for the fleeting, illusory promise of security? How much? The question was a traitorous whisper, escaping my lips before I could consciously form it, a testament to my utter brokenness. He named a sum, his eyes glinting with triumph. It was more money than I had seen in over a year, more than I could have hoped to earn in months of legitimate, back-breaking work had any been available to me, enough to truly escape this grinding poverty. Or so the desperate, insidious voice in my head screamed. I'll have to think about it," I stammered, buying myself a few more moments of pathetic delusion. "Don't think too long, Chloe," he said, his voice once again firm, the voice of command. "Opportunities like this, for a woman in your position, are exceptionally rare. And they don't last forever." Chloe is now standing on the precipice of an even more devastating compromise, with Mr. Davenport pushing her further into a world of exploitation. The choice he offers is wrapped in the language of opportunity, but it's a dangerous, slippery slope. What are the insidious ways coercion can mask itself as choice, especially when someone is in a vulnerable position? Share your insights and reflections in the comments below. If this story is compelling you to think deeply, please show your support by liking this video and subscribing to Hidden Love Stories. We truly value your presence and wish you strength as you continue this journey with Chloe. I didn't think for long. What was there to think about? The alternative was the abyss. A few nights later, Mr. Davenport, with an almost paternalistic air that was deeply unsettling, escorted two men to my door. They were older than him, impeccably dressed in dark, expensive suits that screamed of wealth and an unspoken, chilling authority. Their eyes, when they rested on me, were cold, appraising, like collectors examining a new, potentially valuable acquisition. Mr. Davenport made the briefest of introductions. No names, just a nod towards me, then left, a silent, knowing smirk his parting gesture. The unspoken commission already tallied in his mind. The hours that followed were a carefully orchestrated, nightmarish performance of submission and feigned desire. I moved through the motions, my body an instrument for their pleasure, my mind retreating to a distant, silent, watchful place. There was no pretense of seduction, no illusion of choice or mutual participation. It was a transaction, cold, hard, and clear. They were not overtly brutal, not in the physical sense I had perhaps obscurely feared, but their detached, almost clinical sense of entitlement, their assumption of my complete and utter availability, was a different, more insidious kind of violation. They used me, methodically and thoroughly, and I let them, my shame a constant burning ember deep within my soul, a fire that I feared would eventually consume what little was left of me. The money they left on my nightstand, a neat stack of crisp $100 bills, was, as Mr. Davenport had promised, substantial. It felt like blood money, heavy and tainted in my trembling hand. It paid the overdue rent, it bought groceries, it even allowed me to buy a new, respectable dress for job interviews that I knew, with a sickening certainty, I would never truly pursue with any real hope. Every time I looked in the mirror now, I saw a stranger, her eyes haunted, her smile a carefully constructed, brittle lie. Who was this Chloe? I didn't recognize her. This became the new, horrifying pattern of my existence. Mr. Davenport, my landlord, my benefactor, my de facto pimp, would arrange the introductions, as he euphemistically called them. Each time, another piece of me chipped away, eroded by the escalating shame, the corrosive self-loathing, the growing, terrifying numbness that was rapidly becoming my only defense against the unbearable reality of my life. I told myself it was temporary, a desperate means to a desperate end, but the end never seemed to get any closer, only receded further into the distance, and the means were systematically, inexorably destroying me. There was no infidelity in the traditional sense. I had no partner to betray, no vows to break other than those I had once made to myself, to live with dignity, with self-respect. But the betrayals were deeper, more insidious, more personal. I had betrayed every value I once held sacred, every fragile dream I once had for my future. I had betrayed the scared, hopeful, naive young woman I used to be, the one who had come to this glittering, heartless city with stars in her eyes. She was gone now, replaced by this hollow-eyed, compliant shell. One cold, rainy afternoon, months into this new, nightmarish existence, I found myself staring out the grimy, tear-streaked window of my small apartment. The city lights blurred into a meaningless, melancholic smear. The money, what was left of it after Mr. Davenport took his considerable management fee, was there, tucked away in a battered shoebox under my bed, but the emptiness inside me was a vast, echoing, desolate void. Mr. Davenport had called earlier, his voice cheerful, almost avuncular. Another opportunity had arisen, another pair of discerning gentlemen. I hadn't given him an answer yet. I simply couldn't bring myself to speak. The reflection staring back at me from the rain-streaked glass was a hollow-eyed stranger, her face a mask of quiet despair. Was this it? Was this all that was left of Chloe? A woman who sold pieces of herself, night after night, to keep a leaky roof over her head in a city that didn't care if she lived or died. The price of sanctuary, I realized with a chilling clarity, was far higher than I could have ever imagined. The crimson ledger of my landlord's cruel bargains was not kept in ink, but etched onto my very soul. Survival had a price, a terrible, soul-crushing, unending price. And I was beginning to understand, with a despair that was almost a physical ache, that some debts can never truly be repaid, some stains can never truly be washed away. The arrangement had saved me from the immediate terror of the streets, but in doing so, it had plunged me into a different kind of prison, one with invisible, unbreakable bars and equally unyielding, suffocating walls. I was more lost, more imprisoned in my small paid-for apartment than I had ever been before. And the most terrifying part, a small, insidious voice whispered from the darkest corner of my mind that perhaps, just perhaps, this was all I was good for now. Chloe's journey into this dark world, born of desperation, reveals the harrowing ease with which vulnerability can be exploited and how quickly the lines between victimhood and complicity can blur in the struggle for basic survival. Her story is a stark testament to the enduring scars left by such experiences. What societal structures or personal safety nets do you think need to be in place to prevent individuals from facing such impossible choices? How can we, as a community, offer more than just judgment? We invite your profound and compassionate reflections in the comments below. Thank you for accompanying Chloe through this incredibly difficult and poignant chapter on hidden love stories. We believe that by sharing these true, often painful narratives, we can foster greater empathy, understanding, and perhaps even inspire change. If this story has moved you or made you reflect deeply, please consider liking this video, subscribing to our channel for more hidden stories, and sharing it with those who might find solace or understanding in these discussions. We wish you peace, strength, and the wisdom to navigate the complexities of life with compassion. Thank you for being an integral part of our community.